What is up and welcome back, everybody. So in today's video, we're going to be tackling the front suspension. We're going to be replacing the front shock as well as our lower control arm. So let's go ahead and just dive right in and get right into it. Alright guys, I do want to start off by saying I apologize. Unfortunately, it is just kind of hard to try to record doing the suspension stuff just because you are working inside of this smaller area. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I'm going to go ahead and say is when you're doing the front suspension, just like we said in the rear, go ahead and just assess what you have, what you're going to be doing, and all the components you're going to be taking off, okay? So for example, here we're going to be taking off our sway bar. We're going to be taking off the bolt at the top for the shock. We're going to be taking off the shock completely, and then we're going to go ahead and loosen these guys after we do a very special step. And then we're going to be taking off the one, if I'm not mistaken, it is a 19mm bolt down here that holds the lower control arm to the spindle. So first and foremost, let me go ahead and show you guys the tools that we are going to be using, okay? We're going to be using a 22 wrench, a 22 deep socket. Obviously, we have our 1/2 inch ratchet. We're going to be needing an extension, our stubby little 19. We are going to be using a paint pen again. We're going to be using a number 7 Allen key hooked up to our 3/8 ratchet, a 19 ratchet as well, or a 19 socket, I apologize, as well as a 13mm socket. Obviously, we're going to be using the greatest tool ever invented, the hammer, as well as a ball joint removal tool. Now, the very first thing I like to do personally is go ahead and grab your jack and put it right underneath the control arm, and just let's loosen a little bit of tension on this shock right here so we just have less of a load. So let's go ahead and do that first. All right, guys. So personally, where I like to put my jack is right where the control arm meets the ball joint, right in this little welded spot. So go ahead and just jack it up right here. Right there, right on that lip. And then what we're going to do is grab our 22 7mm and our 3/8 ratchet. And what we're going to do is loosen the 22 right here, and then obviously start turning that guy. The way I like to do this is obviously put your 22 in there just like this. Whew, let's see if I can just one hand. Just like that, and just like, if I can put it in there, just like that. So this right here is how I like to set up my tools. By the way, when you guys are twisting this bolt and this nut, make sure that obviously you're loosening this, but when you're turning it, you are actually tightening it, or you're, I guess, putting it on. You're not going to be turning it to take it off. The reason you're doing that is because what you want to do is just hold this straight, and then only turn your ratchet, by the way. So after you do that, it will loosen, and then the shock will start moving down. All right, now right after you take off the nut, just go ahead and put it right here on your fuse box. And one thing you want to do is check this gasket right here. Check these rubbers. See if they're cracked, if they're worn, if they're messed up in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, these ones look really, really good. So we're going to go ahead and leave these ones. We're not going to be replacing them. But if you do need to or you want to, it is just this 13mm here, here, and right there. Right after you pull the shock down, you literally just take off those and it'll fall right out. Very, very easy to replace that guy. Okay, now that we have our shock pretty much disassembled, the next thing I like to do is go ahead and loosen these two 13mm. Oh, come on, camera. There we go. Make sure you go ahead and loosen these two 13mm for your sway bar end links. Alright guys, so as you can tell, we went ahead and took off that bracket and the two 13mm bolts for our sway bar. We're just going to go ahead and let it sit just like this for a while. Next, what we're going to do is take our marker or our paint pen, and we are going to put a mark or a dot on our washers for our bolts that hold our control arm there and right there. You're only going to be doing this if you have a good alignment, and you obviously want to try to set this up the best way you can. If you have a crappy alignment, obviously you guys can go ahead and skip this step, but if you do have a good alignment like this car does have, we want to go ahead and keep this so that way we don't have to take it to get an alignment done, because trying to do an alignment by yourself or at home is very difficult, and it's also just a pain in the butt. So let's just go ahead and be safe and put a dot on each of these, just so that we know exactly where our control arms are supposed to be sitting. All right, guys, so as you can tell, it looks like someone has actually already done this in the past when they replaced the control arms. We have a dot right over here, and then a line right here. Obviously, our new line is right there. And then on this side, you can tell somebody did it on this one as well, which is kind of funny and ironic, but yeah, we obviously have our dots here on this side. And just because I am a little bit, obviously, I just want to make sure we use the right lines. I apologize. We have that line right there, and then obviously on that side, we do have that line right there. Again, this is just kind of a little bit of a safety thing if you're trying to keep your alignment good on your car. So yeah, that right there is probably going to be the next step or next thing you want to do. Next, what we're going to be doing is loosening this bolt right here, which is a 19 millimeter. And this guy right here, which is also a 19 millimeter. And then we're going to go ahead and loosen this 19 that's right here, as well as the 19 on the other side, which is right there. So let's go ahead and loosen all these 19s really quick and knock that out. All right, guys, so I figured I'd also go ahead and show you how I set up my tools. Obviously, I use my stubby tool. I just put it right against the shock just like that, so that you're not trying to hold both of the tools. But yeah, obviously, this here is how I have mine set up. And then what you want to do, oh my goodness, is obviously just crank away. Make sure you hold this when you bring it back, and then, yep, that's it. But all right, there's how you loosen that. All right, guys, after you have it loosened, go ahead and take off the nut and bolt. And then what I personally like to do, just so I don't lose my bolt or nut, is I like to put it in the location on the new shock. So that way, again, you don't misplace it, you don't lose it or nothing. Just like we did with the rear, you're going to do that exact same thing with the front, just to be kind of safe and you don't lose anything. Now let's go ahead and loosen the other two that are on the bottom. All right, guys, now that we have our bolts out of our spring all the way completely on both sides, what we're going to go ahead and do is lower the jack now. We're just going to lower the jack enough so that way we can pull out our shock, okay? All right, so I do want to tell you guys, obviously what I did was I just hammered this right here just a little bit, and then while I was hammering it, I pulled on the spindle a little bit just to kind of pull it away from the shock. Now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull this guy out. Luckily for us, these shocks are shot, so they really don't have any, I guess, load on them. But yeah, now let's just go ahead and remove that guy really fast. All right, guys, now what you're going to do is go ahead and just jack up your lower control arm just enough, and then we are going to go ahead and take off our caliper. I obviously put this up so that way this thing isn't dangling to the side. We don't want to mess up our brake lines or anything else. So let's go ahead and loosen the 19s that hold on our brake caliper, which is right here, as well as right here. As you guys can see, I've already been loosening them. But yeah, let's go ahead and take off our brake caliper, use our nice little bungee cord, and put that sucker to the side so that way, again, we don't break anything or mess anything up. All right, guys, so as you can see, we just bungee corded our brake caliper right at the top. This thing shouldn't go anywhere no matter how much it moves, which is nice and safe. Obviously, our ABS speed sensor will go ahead and keep connected. Next, what we're going to do is remove the 19 on the lower control arm right here. Can't even really see it, but there's a 19 millimeter on this side right here. We are going to pull it completely out 100%, and the reason we do that is because there is a notch on the control arm right there that actually does hold the control arm in place. So let's go ahead and pull that guy out, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, so as you can tell, we did go ahead and remove that 19 millimeter bolt, and our control arm did start going down. I just kind of pulled on the spindle a little bit. Next, what you're going to want to do is actually take off your rotor. So let me go ahead and take that guy off really fast. All right, after you have your rotor removed, what you're going to want to do is pull on this lower piece just a little bit like this. And the reason that we do that is so that way we can pull the entire spindle right off the knuckle. So let me see if I can't set you guys up and show you guys how to do this possibly. So usually it is pretty easy like this. In the past, I have had a few times where I needed to use my ball joint removal tool to obviously put in there and pull it out, but this one seems to be fairly decent, just like that. Now what I'm going to do is actually put this guy to the side, and I'm going to take another bungee cord, and I'm just going to bungee cord this thing right out of the way. So let's go ahead and tie this up really quick and then show you guys. All right, guys, so as you can see, we went ahead and just pushed the spindle right to the side. We obviously have our arms still connected and everything. It's just bungee corded up out of the way, just like our brake caliper. Next, what you're going to want to do before you start dropping, obviously, the tension and putting this thing all the way down is, I did already do it off camera, I apologize. Go ahead and loosen these two 22 millimeter nuts on both sides of the control arm. You're going to loosen the nuts and take off the washer and nut on both sides. Obviously, keep the bolts in because, well, we still need to lower our spring and everything so we can get tension off this guy. But go ahead and loosen these guys and take them completely off, okay? So let's go ahead and do that really fast. All right, guys, so as you can see and as you can tell, we have our nuts and our washers completely off, but our bolts are still in. After you do that, go ahead and just start lowering your control arm. See if I can do this with one hand. Let's cross our fingers, hope nothing bad happens. Just start lowering the control arm, just like this. And when you lower the control arm, obviously you're going to have no more tension. Oh, look at that. It's already off completely. What you're going to do, push your control arm down a little bit, pull out your, pull out your spring, and then these guys right here shouldn't have too much tension on them. Go ahead and hit out both of your bolts. Make sure when you take them out, you put one on this side. You take one, put it on this side. Oh goodness, this might be a pain in the butt to take out. Let's go, come on. Alrighty. Take it out. Toss it aside, it is trash now. Grab your new one. Oh my goodness. Put that guy up and basically do reverse steps of what we just did. So let me go ahead and put these bolts in and put this guy up. Alright guys, so once you get this guy put in, obviously go ahead and just set up your spring just like that. You're going to go ahead and put your bolts in, put your nuts on. Do not tighten these bolts. This is probably going to be the very last step that you do when installing everything, okay? So you're going to put everything back together just like it should be. You're going to do all the steps in reverse. You're obviously going to lift this guy back up. You're going to put your spindle back on, put your bolt back in your spindle, put your rotor back on, put your caliper back on, put your shock back on where it's supposed to go, and then when you're done with that, then you're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts right here. You don't want to tighten them until the very, very end, because if you do, you're going to destroy your bushings on your brand new control arm, and you basically just wasted doing this entire thing for no reason. So definitely make sure you do that last. But I'm not going to obviously show you guys how to put everything back together. It is very, very simple. You just basically go in reverse of what we just did. So I'll go ahead and put a list right here of exactly how I do it. All right, now with that being said and that being shown, guys, I am going to go ahead and give you a little sneak peek for what obviously we're going to be doing next Wednesday. That's all you get. You're not going to get any more than that. Stay tuned, because that video will be extremely detailed. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I do, how I do everything, and yeah, it's going to be way more intricate than I think just removing all of the components on this. Obviously, I didn't show you guys how to install them. I did have a few people message me and say, hey man, that video kind of sucked. Why didn't you show us how to install it? Seriously guys, if you basically took it apart the exact way I took it apart and you put it back together the exact way we put it back together, there's absolutely no reason why you can't basically go in reverse and do the video. I kind of felt like it was a little unnecessary, one, and then two, obviously I'm not going to be putting my springs back on, so there's no point for me to completely do this step. It just doesn't really make any sense. But if you guys stayed all the way till the end, you guys learned something, you guys liked the video, you guys are good with everything, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. Hit that notification button so you guys can see what we're going to be doing next Wednesday. Like I said, Airride is going to be getting installed, so stay tuned for that one. But again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around, and we'll see you next Wednesday.